Hey, everybody. What day is it? I don't even know my days. Happy Thursday, I think. I'm not going to lie. We absolutely played hooky from the internet yesterday for a lot of reasons. And I don't know if you guys spend as much time on the interwebs as myself, but there was just a whole lot of BS happening on the internet yesterday, a la some conversations about World War II, and a lot of other things that, let's just be totally transparent, made me want to gouge my eyes out with a fork rather than continue staring at a screen. So I played hooky from the internet yesterday simply for mental health reasons, and I now feel a bit more prepared to return from my 24-hour sabbatical. We're going to have a lot to talk about in relation to all of that in the next couple of weeks, but honestly, I'm just not really emotionally ready to address all of that at the moment. I'm so wildly frustrated by the bad ideas that are becoming more and more and more normalized and mainstreamed, the lies that are becoming more normalized and mainstreamed. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just count yourself very lucky that you are generally unsubscribed from internet culture. If you do know what I'm referring to, with a very viral podcast episode that really broke the internet yesterday with a historian who claimed that Winston Churchill, not Adolf Hitler, was the chief villain of World War II, being celebrated largely by the political right. We'll get into it at some point. Not today, though, because we have more important things that I really want us to talk about today. And honestly, I'm just really sick and tired of drama on the internet. All of that to be said, welcome back to the Isabel Brown Show. I am so glad you guys are here. And right off the rip, as we're getting started with today's episode, do me a huge favor and smash that follow or subscribe button wherever you guys are following us to help us continue growing our communities one person at a time. We have a great show lined up for you today, centered around underlying health problems that are decimating the United States of America. A lot of you guys have been encouraging me to check out a brother-sister duo that is wildly shaking up the American healthcare conversation, Casey and Calley Means, who recently have been advising several presidential candidates in their race for president of the United States about issues surrounding big pharma and big food, and have been going around the podcast circuit talking about all of the issues health-wise America is uniquely facing, particularly as it pertains to women's health. And that's what I really want us to focus on today, because I am just blown away about the things that I knew, or I kind of didn't know, or I halfway knew, but I've never heard articulated so powerfully as I have from Calley and Casey Means. We're going to be reacting to a few clips of a podcast that they recently did here in the next couple of minutes. But first, want to share with you maybe the most ridiculous, crazy thing I've ever seen in my entire existence on social media. I posted a video about this on Instagram, and I think that was it. Yeah, just Instagram this morning, and it's already up to like 500,000 views in about 2 hours. So clearly you guys are responding to this with the same amount of fury and outrage that I too am experiencing. But I came across a video on X, Twitter, the other day as I was scrolling through looking for stories to talk about on the show, of a mom who courageously is trying to expose the attack on gender and the attack on young children in particular. She was doing some digging on the internet and found several companies that are selling something called Packers to young children younger than the age of 5. If you don't know what a Packer is, this is a colloquial term for a prosthetic penis or a prosthetic entire male genitalia system that you would put inside of your underwear as a woman in order to pass publicly as a man, to put a fake bulge, using the lingo here, I'm not making this up, in your pants to pass as a man. But it's not enough to just sell this incredibly bizarre product to adults. There are now multiple companies that are marketing these products to your children. So as we're talking about the attack on health of women and children alike today, what better opportunity than to start by talking about the clear and obvious assault on the mental health of children in America and their spiritual health and their physical health all wrapped into one with the incessant obsession I am seeing depraved adults embrace to destroy your child's identity, one woke terminology and product at a time. If you didn't have a chance to watch this video already, we are going to check it out together, but just be forewarned, this is a little crazy, and we will fact check it together afterward. This is this mom who I saw on Twitter, X, who exposed this reality, and I blurred the more graphic part of the video, so it's blurry, but you can still very obviously tell what everything is. Just sit back and watch this.
Some of you may not know what a packer is. That's a packer. It's intended for girls under 5 to put in their underwear so that they have a bulge that mimics a penis. This is for a girl under 5.
Under the age of 5. These products are marketed to little girls, young girls, who have no idea or should have no idea what male genitalia is supposed to look like. If they are in a protected environment, should have absolutely no clue what male genitalia is supposed to look like, so that parents can put these in their child's underwear so that they can publicly pass as a boy.
It's intended for her to put in her panties so that she has a bulge that looks like a boy's. I can't even imagine what parent would buy this for their daughter, a child under 5 years old, and then in the morning say, honey, don't forget to put your packer in.
Don't forget to put your packer in, honey. Everything's going to work out fine. I've watched that video over and over and over again like 20 times, and genuinely, I cannot get over how truly insane it is. So when I saw this clip, I think rightfully so, like most people, I said to myself, there is literally no fundamental way this is remotely humanly possible. There is no way this is remotely possible. Maybe she's exaggerating and this isn't really geared towards kids. Maybe it is, but it's like a satire thing or like a weird product people are trying to jokingly sell on the internet. Oh no. No. I decided to do some fact checking of my own, considering the social media fact checkers are not always the most reliable bunch of people. And it turns out that as early as 2015, this blog called Fourth Wave Now was reporting on a company in San Francisco selling packers to trans boys, aka little girls, ages 4 and up. Ages 4 and up. This was published in 2015, September of 2015. And in addition, there are multiple websites like this one, Trans Guy Supply, which, yes, indeed, is an online merchandise store that you too can go to purchase binders, which squish down the breasts of young women to make them appear as male, or also packers in order to have your downstairs genitalia publicly appear as male. And on Trans Guy Supply's online merchandise platform, they, in fact, I'm not going to show you the images of this product at the risk that this video ends up getting taken down, but it's above. If I scrolled up, that's where we would end up going. We're not going up there. They are selling on their website a specific product marketed for youth, the Archer Youth, which is 2 inches. So it's meant for children. Comes in 4 skin color shades. We've got cashew, which is unavailable, been sold out. Caramel, which is unavailable, been sold out. Hazelnut, which is unavailable, been sold out. And chocolate, which you still can purchase. And is a female to male FTM packer specifically designed for transgender youth. Trans Guy Supply is advertising this product saying the Archer Youth Packer is a premium circumcised silicone packer, a trusted and cherished favorite. It is circumcised, thank you for the reminder, and features a realistic head and detailing throughout the shaft and testicles. It is a great choice for any young person, youth, transgender youth. It is a great choice for any young person looking for a long-lasting, sterilizable, hypoallergenic, daily silicone packer. Daily. For the low price of $45. Which clearly people are buying because it's sold out. It is literally sold out. And upon further digging, found another online merchandise platform that is selling these products to children. They are on sale from the $45 normal price down to $25.95, where you too, as a parent of a female to male child or teenagers, can purchase child/teen packers, including their smallest size available called the Teeny Bopper. The Teeny Bopper. Size appropriate for kids ages 7 to 12, and two sizes smaller that are available for kids aged 4 to 8. 4 years old. So, in case you're wondering about the mental health of the next generation of children, start hitting your knees and praying every single day, because there is an actual population of grown-ass adults purchasing false, detailed, anatomically correct silicone penises to force into their daughter's underwear, their little girl as young as 4 years old, her underwear, so that she can publicly pass as a boy. But I thought genitalia didn't define gender. I thought your body parts didn't make you a boy or a girl. Until now, apparently. This is so unbelievably disgusting and obviously speaks to the mental health crisis that this country is experiencing, because no longer is this crisis isolated to the rapidly growing numbers of people who are being indoctrinated into thinking they were born in the wrong body and they were wrongfully assigned their gender by some oppressive, horrible, evil doctor at birth. And the only way to truly liberate themselves is to change their gender identity. No, now you're seeing that generation grow up and force their kids into this. And force their 4-year-old daughters into this. Not okay. Never okay. But speaks volumes about the type of mental health crisis we are dealing with in America. I am so grateful, by the way, that I've switched most of my shopping away from any company that remotely would platform something like this. Like, I don't know, potentially an Amazon, although I haven't done a lot of digging to see if Amazon is selling this stuff, but would it surprise me? No. And instead, I really try to go out of my way to purchase as much as I possibly can from our friends over at Public Square. Public Square is America's largest and fastest growing marketplace, all of small businesses that are pro-family, pro-faith, and pro-freedom, more than 100,000 of them, and everything you could possibly need to actually raise your children appropriately or for yourself. Clothes, food, people to help you plan your vacation, beach items, stuff to go fishing and camping, anything and everything you can possibly imagine, you can find on Public Square so that you can support businesses that support your values. You can check them out or add your small business of any kind to their roster at publicsquare.com. And I really hope to see some of you who might own your own small business at their first ever small business summit next month in Orlando, Florida, where your girl will, in fact, be present. We know that there is a massive mental health crisis in America, but there's also a massive physical health crisis, largely of preventable issues that center around lifestyle and diet, all unfolding right before our very eyes, and what we have plummeted into with increasing veracity every single year over the past several decades. Last week on the show, we talked about RFK dropping out of the presidential race and how absolutely monumental his speech was. We reacted to a few minutes of that, talking about big pharma, big food, and wanting to dedicate more time in public service to educating the masses about this. In the midst of doing some research on who you guys are suggesting we try to have on the pod, which we absolutely will be working on, I came across a fascinating interview done on Tucker Carlson's show. Again, we're not talking about the insane viral story from yesterday related to historians and World War II. At some point, we may address that, but emotionally, I'm just not ready to talk about it. So this is not at all commentary on this particular podcast or this particular podcast host. I really want you to focus on the guests and what they're talking about. But I came across this interview from August 16th, so a couple of weeks ago, with Dr. Calley Means and her brother Calley Means, who are really doing everything they can to shed light on the insane realities of food, pharmaceuticals, and the general operating system of the healthcare system in the United States that are all causing preventable issues, slowly destroying the fabric of society from the physical perspective, and largely focusing on women and children. Dr. Calley Means was going through her surgery residency program at Stanford University when she dropped out in the 5th year because she literally could not take any more of the turn and churn, big pharma-oriented medical system that makes up the majority of doctors in the United States. And her brother, Calley Means, was actually a lobbyist for big pharma and the food industry. And both of them ended up quitting their jobs when they realized how many people in America were being killed by the systems that they were participating in, and now are dedicating their entire life to try to change the system from the inside out. In and of itself, their story is an absolutely amazing story, and we are 100,000% going to try to have them have a chance to tell their story here to you guys on the show. But I wanted to react to a few minutes of their conversation with Tucker Carlson, because as we're watching the health of women and children be so dramatically attacked, I think what most people don't realize is we're failing to ask the underlying questions, largely about how we could have prevented these things. In this interview with Tucker Carlson, they start talking about chemicals causing early puberty in the United States. They get into the birth control pill, which you guys know I am wildly passionate about and wish more people were talking about, and infertility as well. And these are the few little segments I wanted to give us a chance to react to. So let's check out Calley and Calley Means.
Breast cancer is now 1 in 8 women. You know, this is often an estrogen.
It's a foodborne illness.
Estrogen-driven cancer. Well, where are all these extra estrogens coming from? Maybe it's the 6 billion pounds of pesticides that are being invisibly sprayed on all of our food and poisoning it. And what are these pesticides doing? They're estrogen receptor agonists. Interesting. Being sold to us from China and from Germany, you know?
Which they're not using in their food there.
Illegal.
So what does that mean? I'm sorry. I just want to make sure the science is clear, because I don't really understand it. It's the effects of these chemicals on food is what?
So the ostensibly these chemicals are being used 6 billion pounds globally per year because of pest control. They're also being used on our children's parks and golf courses and all over the place. They're invisible, they're tasteless, and they are directly toxic to our cellular biology. So they're pesticides. Side is the word for the act of killing. So herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. And they are so toxic that 20% of all suicides globally are performed by drinking pesticides. And
did you know that? First of all, insane, right? This is insane that estrogens are being spread all over everything we touch. The food that we eat, the playgrounds that kids play on, like estrogens drive pesticides and herbicides. That's the primary compound. We spray them on everything. We touch and eat all of these things. And yet they are so unbelievably toxic to you that 20%, according to Dr. Calley Means, I got to check this out, but 20% of all suicides performed globally happen by overdosing on pesticides. We know that they kill us. We intentionally use them to kill ourselves, and yet we keep eating them. We know they're on everything. We keep ingesting them, and we act like it's no big deal. That's insane.
Yet we're told by our government that they're totally safe.
But this is all a result of the food industry wanting food cheaper. And we spend per capita half as much on food as they do in Europe. But we spend 3 times more per capita on healthcare. So my big point to everyone is this is not the free market at work. This is food companies lobbying to have neurotoxins and endocrine disrupting chemicals on our food that are toxic, that aren't allowed on any other food in any other developed country.
And this guy was a lobbyist for Big Pharma and Big Food, okay? If anybody understands how the system works, it is Calley Means, 100,000%. But I love how he illustrated this, because as I've been going down this what's really going on in the American healthcare system rabbit hole for the last several years of my life, this is not a new journey of exploration I've been engaging in. You guys might remember I studied biomedical sciences policy and advocacy for my master's degree at Georgetown University. And while I was at Georgetown, one of the primary things that kept coming up when I was there, we were learning about the inner workings, even from people who work at the FDA and the CDC and the NIH, was that it's constantly a revolving door between the food lobbyists and the food company workers, and the same thing goes for pharmaceuticals, and the government that approves those products to begin with. So quite regularly, people who were top executives at Pfizer, or what's another huge food company, General Mills or something, would go and leave their jobs from the private sector to go work in the regulatory sector for the government, largely for the FDA, and they would just constantly switch back and forth. And it would be this revolving door of government officials going to work for the companies, of the company officials going to work for the government. And it was the same elite group of like a few hundred people that were constantly deciding which food products were hitting the market and allowed to hit the market, which pharmaceuticals were allowed to be developed and allowed to hit the market, and which ones didn't receive approval because they weren't part of the in crowd. So he's absolutely right. There is this underlying current and intentional reality happening in America right now, where the top people at the most powerful food companies, of which there are only a few. We've looked at all of the charts on the show in the past about how many companies really own all of the other companies, and it's like 4. So that's fun. The top people at these companies are literally in bed with the top people who regulate said companies. And it is the most corrupt area of the American governance system I've ever identified, ever encountered. I've worked for several branches of the government. Even if you think like the military industrial complex is wildly corrupt, they have nothing. They actually have laws preventing some of this stuff. So they have nothing on big food and big pharma. So as it pertains to cancer rates and other problems like early puberty, Calley and Casey Means are trying to raise the alarm that let's talk about food, for example, the number one thing we can use to prevent illness, both from a nutrition standpoint, but also from the additives standpoint and the herbicides and pesticides reality. If we are experiencing a surge in stuff like breast cancer, where 1 in 8 women are now being diagnosed with breast cancer in their lifetime, which comes from a surge of estrogen, where are we getting so much estrogen? It's in the food. Why is it approved in our food? Because the same people who regulate the food want to sell you pharmaceuticals. They're all the same people, which is why even though we spend less on food in America than they do in Europe, we spend 3 times the amount than Europe does on healthcare per capita,
in order to make food a lot cheaper. And then to your point about, what do these chemicals do? It increases estrogen. And these kids are inhaling hormone disrupting chemicals. So
and now
the New York Times recently had a front page article that puberty rates, particularly among women in the United States, are plummeting. People are hitting puberty years younger. Girls are hitting
how
puberty.
young?
The average girl in America is hitting puberty, which is sexual maturity, 6 years earlier than they were in 1900. We have the earliest puberty rates of any continent in the world. It's age 10.
10 years old. The average puberty age for a girl in America.
And 10 to 13. And this is in large part thought to do because of we're literally giving children estrogen with all the plastics we're ingesting, which are xenoestrogens, meaning they are exogenous artificial estrogens, and the pesticides, which can activate the estrogen receptors like atrazine.
Can we just go to the pill?
So in case that's not obvious to you, and I'll rewind this a little tiny bit because I want us to be able to come back to that. In case that's not incredibly obvious to you, the amount of estrogen we are consuming in our food is not only increasing stuff like cancer rates, it's also decreasing the average age of puberty, putting young women through puberty earlier and earlier and earlier, with the average age being 10 years old. Chills. That is shocking information to me. And nobody's talking about that. Nobody's asking about it. Nobody's doing studies about this. And yet it's all fairly obvious. If we're increasing estrogen, which would speed up puberty and cause cancer, where's the estrogen coming from? This is insane. So they talk for a while about this. And again, I highly encourage you to check out this whole episode because they got into seed oils and all kinds of stuff related to diet. But they switched gears a little bit about halfway through to talk about the birth control pill, which you guys know I am wildly passionate about, having taken birth control myself for so many years. I feel incredibly lucky to have been detoxed from it for the last several years of my life. I quit when I was 24. Finally, once and for all, I started taking it when I was 15. And I'm quite transparent about my story with birth control because I think transparency is so key in this conversation. For whatever reason, we've been afraid to talk about this publicly because people might judge you for taking it or whatever, especially in religious circles. But I'm finding what most people don't realize is the vast majority of young women my age have been prescribed birth control and have been told they need to take birth control because of reasons other than preventing conception of a child. They are not sexually active. This is not why they're being prescribed this medication. Instead, birth control is the Band-Aid solution slapped on to anything remotely associated with adolescence for young women. For example, I was first prescribed birth control as an acne intervention because I was taking Accutane after blowing through every single other acne product on the dermatological market. Every single thing that you could possibly try, pill or topical or otherwise, we were there. And nothing was making my acne go away. In retrospect, probably should have thought about seed oils, but we didn't know what we didn't know at the time, right? Nobody was having that conversation then. And was prescribed birth control. And after that, every single healthcare practitioner in my life said, even if you're not using this to prevent conception of a child, even if you're not sexually active, you need to stay on birth control because otherwise you're going to break out like crazy all the time and you're going to be ugly again. Otherwise, you're going to gain a bunch of weight. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable. Otherwise, your periods are going to suck. You're going to get really crampy. Your back's going to hurt all the time. Like, this is the magic pill that's going to solve all of your problems. And I'm finding that literally, with very few exceptions, I can probably count them on one hand, every single one of my friends was sold the same bill of goods, the same set of lies, the same propagandized talking points at age 14, 15, 16, 17 years old and have been taking birth control for decades of their life only to quit and realize they were miserable because of the birth control, not because of anything else, that they were slow release poisoning themselves. And we've done many deep dive episodes on birth control. We're going to do another one here in the next couple of weeks because people have been asking about it for some updated information and studies that have been coming out. But I love how Calley and Casey Means get into birth control because they echo so much of the experiences we've had in our generation and these concerns that are just now bravely started to be talked about.
Let's go to the pill really quick. And I just want to say up front that, you know, I'm Protestant. I never had a problem with birth control, never thought about it, but at all. So that's my position, or has been my position, which is
That's interesting he says that. He's differentiating from the Catholic Church, which has always said birth control is wrong, like conception, period, blocking conception, period, is wrong. They would say that about condoms. They would say that about birth control pills. They would say that about IUDs. Protestant denominations typically don't have as hard line of a stance against conception blockers, birth control. But that's interesting that he creates that differentiation.
Actually radically changing as we speak. But I've always felt that way. So I never really thought about it. But I always noticed that you were not allowed to criticize the pill. Period. Like, that was not allowed in the world I grew up in. You could have all kinds of kooky opinions. You cannot criticize the birth control pill. And now I feel like maybe we were played a little bit. Why you're laughing sardonically.
She gets it.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak as a physician, but I can also just speak as a woman
yes.
who has taken all these different medications
Yes.
because it's liberation.
Yeah.
It's liberation.
Yes.
We can do whatever we want, and who needs to get a period when you can, work in the hospital 100 hours a week and put off having, and then I freeze my eggs at 37 and have kids, so.
Which is the bill of goods that was sold to everybody. Why would you want a period? Periods are so terrible. Periods make you miserable. Periods are so painful. Avoid it. Avoid it, avoid it, avoid it, avoid it, avoid it. You won't get one on the birth control pill. That was literally told to everyone my age, and we believed that was better.
As a woman, I do think, of course, these drugs have helped in some ways, but we are prescribing them like candy. We're prescribing them for acne. We're prescribing them for PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, the leading cause of infertility in the United States, which is a metabolic issue driven by our food, and how the food interacts with genetics. And then, of course, for birth control. So you've got these medications that are literally shutting down the hormones in the female body that create this cyclical life-giving nature of women. We basically told women these hormones don't matter. Your ability to create the most miracle of any miracles, which is create life, just shut it down. There's no impacts. That's crazy to me. And as I've woken up from this, I'm realized your cycle and having these hormonal cycles is part and parcel with our health in every possible way, and also with the miracle of creating life. And so for years, you just lose the biofeedback of what's happening with your cycle. It is one of the key barometers of female health. How is your cycle doing?
It is the key barometer of female health. And it's honestly psychotic. It's psychotic that our medical system is pretending like you can just temporarily change everybody's cycle, temporarily change your entire hormone cascade, and the only thing that's going to be impacted temporarily is whether or not you ovulate that month. Seriously? That's it? I am so unbelievably passionate about this subject because obviously that's not true. But even when I was learning about all of the intricacies of hormones in endocrinology, in my biomedical sciences program, in physiology, in anatomy, and everything else, I never was taught to critically think, wait a second, wouldn't birth control change a whole lot of other stuff too? All you're ever taught is birth control good, birth control healthy, birth control progressive, birth control feminist, birth control something you should shove into the hands of all of your patients as soon as you guys become doctors. And that always was the message. I never thought about it, never thought critically about it, never thought to question it, until I started going through my own health journey as an adult and realizing, hang on a second, I kind of hate this thing that I take all day, every day. It's awful. How insane to think that we can just temporarily change the entire inner workings of the female body and claim it's only going to affect the outcome of one thing.
Regular? Is it heavy? And we just shut it down and say there's no repercussions for that, which I think gets to a larger issue, which is a disrespect of life, right?
Yes.
It's a disrespect of things that create life. And I think about, you've got the pill and it just goes hand in hand with the rise, and this is going to seem a little far out there, but it goes rise and rhyme with the hand of industrial agriculture, the spraying of these pesticides, the things that give life in this world, which are women and soil. We have tried to dominate and shut down the cycles. Ooh. We have lost respect for life, which again gets to the spiritual crisis.
Keep going. I love this.
And I think
you are speaking truth right now.
The two things, I love this. I have chills listening to this. The two things that create life in this world: soil, to give us food, and women, to give us people. Those two things are what we've inherently disrespected, grossly disrespected in postmodern American culture: soil and women. Because we have a true, inherent, gnawing, deep disdain for life itself. Wow. And therefore, it can be manipulated. Therefore, we don't care to preserve it. We don't care to protect it. We don't care to safeguard it. we're completely fine to chemically or otherwise destroy it in the name of progress solely for the sake of progress. Oh, that's good.
Of efficiency, right? For this delusion of short-term gains, for yields, for profit. But what we need to realize is that we live in an interdependent ecosystem that has to be harmonious, not dominated, which means gentler, and so by taking a hammer to women's hormones, taking a hammer to pests, what we've done is we are destroying the things that give us life in this country. And that is, I think, part of the root cause of why things feel so dark right now, because it's bigger than all of this. We are actually turning our back on life.
Infertility.
We are actually turning our back on life, which, to take things to its natural conclusion, also means that we are turning our back on kids. Taking it back to the beginning of the show today. We're turning our back on innocence. We're turning our back on beauty. Look at America's inner cities right now. Instead of being beacons of incredible architecture and culture and art and food, I don't even need to explain to you how bad things have gotten across the country. We're turning our back on the divine, where we would rather recite the sparkle creed at church instead of adhere to tradition and value. We're turning our back on goodness and truth itself because we are turning our back on life. I love how she said that. There is a spiritual crisis, not just a physical health crisis or a mental health crisis in this country. There is a spiritual crisis happening in this country that is deeply inherently linked to your physical and mental health as well. The last thing that we're going to react to together, but they talk about a whole lot more on the podcast that they did with Tucker Carlson, is the conversation related to infertility. And this is a super interesting conversation because I truthfully haven't done a whole lot of research into infertility itself. I have so many friends and people in my community who are walking through the process of unexplained infertility right now. It is a really harrowingly devastating journey. And I know we kind of touched on infertility a little bit as it pertained to IVF earlier in the week, and people had some thoughts on that. But their entire position here, which I find fascinating, is that the biggest causes of infertility in America right now, which are very common. In fact, somebody told me the other day, I don't want to give you the exact number, but it's something like 25% of all couples right now are dealing with unexplained infertility. That means on paper, and don't quote me on that number, we should fact check that, but basically on paper, everything in her body works, everything in his body works, but something is just not coming together appropriately, and they can't explain why. 1 in 4, I do know this to be true, 1 in 4 pregnancies today in America statistically are ending in miscarriages. So even if you do overcome the massive hurdle of the infertility crisis, then your child has to stay alive and continue developing in your womb, which is an incredibly devastating statistic. So their entire position is the leading causes of infertility, which are wildly common, are reversible, are preventative. And no one in medicine is talking about this. So if I'm going to do deeper research into anything Calley and Casey Means are talking about, it is going to be this. And I am so excited to figure out what we can learn together through the process.
Is a huge issue. As Casey mentioned, PCOS, which is the leading cause of female infertility, 25%.
Can you explain what that is?
Yes. So very good question. So PCOS is the leading cause of female infertility. Anyone listening of childbearing age will know about this.
If you don't know what PCOS is, it's called polycystic ovarian syndrome. Most of you probably know what this is. A lot of you probably have PCOS or have women in your life who have PCOS.
It's an epidemic right now. It's gone up. It's multiples in the past generation.
What does it stand for?
Polycystic ovarian syndrome.
So
ovarian cysts.
Well, let's get into it. So that question you just asked, I know OBGYNs from Harvard who could not answer that question. This is not an exaggeration. OBGYNs are not taught what the condition is. They're only taught what the intervention is.
Okay, so
how can you not be taught what PCOS is in medical school? At Harvard Medical School. You are only taught how to treat it, but not what it is?
Always start. I know nothing about medicine or science, but I do know about interviews. Always start with the dumb questions first.
Good. Yeah.
If you can't answer the dumb questions, I don't believe you.
So when a woman, and many women listening will have PCOS and across their OBGYN, they're put on a cascading set of interventions that are pharmaceutical.
Can you just tell me what it is?
Yeah, it's insulin resistance. It is not related to insulin resistance, which is on the spectrum of diabetes. It is insulin resistance. PCOS is a metabolic condition. Casey can speak a little bit more to it, but it's fundamentally related to the scene.
What is it? Can you just describe its symptoms and
Absolutely.
its effect?
So PCOS, essentially you have an ovary. That ovary is making hormones. And when that ovary is stimulated by excess insulin, which is the hormone in the blood that helps us take blood sugar out of the blood and into the cells, insulin levels go up in the setting of metabolic dysfunction. We basically destroy our cells with our toxic food and lifestyle. The cells can no longer process sugar to energy. So the cell rejects sugar and it stays in the bloodstream. The body compensates by making more insulin to try and drive the sugar into the cell that's putting up a block because it's broken, essentially. That high insulin floats all around the body and does bad things all over the body, like drives cancer growth and also stimulates the ovary to make more testosterone. So you have women who
let me just say, I learned about PCOS at least 3 times in undergrad in my pre-med curriculum. Never once, not once, were we ever taught that PCOS was insulin resistance or had anything to do with insulin as a hormone. We were always told PCOS was tied to testosterone, but we were never told PCOS was tied to insulin resistance, at least as far as I can remember. That's wild.
We're supposed to be making, estrogen and progesterone in very specific levels throughout the hormone cycle so that we can ovulate. And instead, insulin is driving the ovary to create testosterone, which totally disturbs the balance between all the sex hormones in the female body, and we don't ovulate. So you get these cysts that form because you've got an egg trying to basically ovulate, but instead it can't because the hormones are disrupted because of insulin, which is because of metabolic dysfunction, because of our food. And we get infertility because we're not ovulating. So
Lucky Charms leads over time.
100%.
Absolutely.
100%. It's our
But nobody would tell you that. Nobody would tell you that your diet could reverse PCOS or prevent PCOS. Instead, everyone wants to sell you on surgeries. I know many people who've had surgeries for this stuff. They want to sell you on long-term pharmaceuticals. This is insane. I know why nobody's talking about this, but holy cow.
This condition is reversible in as little as 12 weeks with dietary interventions. There is peer-reviewed studies to show this. If we get our blood sugar levels under control and our insulin levels under control, we restore the hormonal balance. And many women, all the symptoms will disappear and they'll be able to become fertile. And yet doctors do not learn. The average doctor is getting zero education in nutrition. And so they don't even see this. They reach the clomiphene, the metformin. The treatment that the OBGYNs are giving to these women is a diabetes drug. And they're not talking about blood sugar.
How is that even? That's just connect the dots a little bit. But if you're never taught that, I understand why it's never something that would ever cross your mind.
Any woman dealing with infertility, this connects everything because the doctor doesn't know what Casey just described. Look, we talked to them. They don't know. They did not learn the physiology of why people actually get this condition. And they eat what they kill. So what do they want more than anything? They want an IVF procedure. They want an invasive surgical procedure.
IVF?
Of course.
Assisted reproductive technology is skyrocketing clinics all over the world.
From an economic perspective, it's a gold mine. If that woman goes on a keto diet, which is the best reversal technique for a PCOS ever studied, 12 weeks, they are robbing that doctor, just from an economic perspective, of tens of thousands of dollars for a gruesome invasive IVF procedure, which is a great procedure. But I think we all should agree, that woman across the table would love to hear that there's a more natural way and just the correct way to reverse this condition, which, by the way,
there are big time downsides to IVF.
And not to mention, if the woman doesn't heal the underlying metabolic issues, it's going to portend issues for the baby.
She will have issues for the rest of her life, but they won't ask the questions about the underlying issues. They won't seek treatment for the underlying issues. They won't attempt to help you understand the underlying issues because according to Casey and Calley Means, the whole system is set up to never, ever approach, let alone investigate any underlying issue. Instead, people eat bad food sold to them from big food companies. They get sick. They have infertility. They get cancer. They have morbid obesity. They deal with chronic health issues for the rest of their life, things marketed as forever illnesses. Stuff like PCOS that will never go away, but apparently could be reversed within 12 weeks with just a change in diet. And for the rest of your life, you are a slave. You are a consumer. You are an indefinite patient of the pharmaceutical industry. I, especially as this conversation about IVF continues heating up, would be fascinated to know, and there's no way for us to actually quantify this because there will never be any research project or scientific study ever conducted on this. But I would love to know the answer to the question of how many people have been told they are required to use ART, assisted reproductive technologies, which includes but is not limited to IVF. There are many other forms of ART, but IVF is the most popular one. Or told that the only way they could ever conceive a child is through in vitro fertilization, which costs, by the way, like $30,000 to $50,000 per round of IVF. When a lot of their problems of diagnosed infertility probably are related to the food that they are eating. I would love to know what percentage of couples with infertility were immediately told the only thing that you will ever be able to do to conceive a child is assisted reproductive technology, stuff like IVF, and we're never told about their diet. We're never told about seed oils. We're never told about estrogens. We're never told about insulin resistance. I think what's really overwhelming for most people right now, and what I'm hoping that we can focus more on the show throughout the next several months, including after the presidential election, but I'm glad that this is taking a front seat, this topic, in the election in the next couple of weeks. What's so overwhelming to people is that this stuff feels so out of our control, but it's really not. Everything feels like, oh my gosh, doom and gloom, apocalypse now, the world is ending, no one can have children. Everybody's infertile. Everybody's obese. Everybody has cancer. Everybody's going to die. Everybody has a mental health condition that's causing them to buy a fake penis to put in their child's underwear. But literally so much of this, the vast majority of this, is changeable, is reversible, is preventable. If only the masses, the general population, are willing to start questioning the institutions, to start taking responsibility into their own hands for how they feed themselves, how they feed their children, understanding what nutrition labels mean, etc., questioning the lack of nutrition education in physician training, questioning stuff like the food pyramid, questioning stuff like the FDA. If we can start asking all the right questions, so much of this is preventable, is changeable. And the scientist in me loves to hear stuff like that because basically they've been running a giant experiment on our population for the past several decades. But the people are starting to wake up and say, we are no longer subjects in your experiment. We are conducting our own experiment to take our health back into our own hands. And nothing you can say is going to stop us. I would love to have Callie and Casey on the podcast, so we're going to be working on that in the next several weeks, and I highly encourage you to go watch that entire episode. It's about 2 hours long, so it is a long watch, but I learned so much from that I never logically thought about in the 5 years in which I studied biomedical sciences at the academic level, and I'm sure that these two brother and sister duo are going to keep changing so many minds and changing the world and the entire conversation around the healthcare system in America, one person at a time. We're going to talk about a lot more of this stuff this fall and going into next spring as requested from you guys. So get excited for all of that. And we will be back for the show tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern for some more. Don't forget to hit that like, follow, and subscribe button wherever you guys are watching to help us continue growing our community. And we will see you tomorrow for the next episode of, drumroll please, the Isabel Brown Show. Bye, guys.